It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the program. And with me in the KFG studios, as always, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
In your 30s, what should your biggest financial priorities be? And how have cultural changes made this decade even more important on the path towards financial freedom? We're going to be discussing that and more on this week's episode of The Wise Money Show.
That's right. We've got questions from fans of the show. We're hoping to get to them. If you have questions or needs, we can help in any way. I know it's volatile and turbulent. It's a VUCA world, folks, and needing financial guidance right now with things moving so quickly is extremely important. We're here to help if you'd like. So reach out. You can call or text us 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com. You can follow us there and get connected with us there as well. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search The Wise Money Show. Okay, guys, just real quick, set all the noise aside. In your 30s, what's your biggest priority when you're in your 30s?
I don't even know if I remember my 30s.
It wasn't that long ago.
I think when you turn 40, your hard drive just gets completely wiped clean, and you don't remember.
Well, there might be something to that. I also think, though, at least for me, I feel that, Josh, and it's because my 30s, the priorities were raising babies, like raising young kids.
Keep these children alive somehow.
And you know, remember when we thought that was hard? And now as the kids get older, you realize really like hard stuff. So, yeah. Kevin, what would you say?
Yeah, that is, it's interesting because in my 30s, it was a time of learning. And especially with the children, because we had our kids in our 30s. We have 3 children. And you have the first child and you think, oh, my, this is so much work. I can't believe how hard this is and difficult and all these things. And you're adjusting and you're really learning. You're beginning to learn the sacrifice required for someone in this world other than just you. Yeah. You become much less selfish, which is positive, I think, and was welcomed. But then it's kind of like going from college to work. In college, I remember thinking, "Oh, this is so stressful. This is so hard, and everything else." And then you go to work, and you're like, "Oh my word.
Wow.
Give me college,
yeah,
right?"
I'll take
and then
that.
and then you go from one child to 2 children, and you say, and you think one child, like, how could it ever be harder than this? And then you have your second child, and you think, oh, this was a cakewalk. or your child, your child is basically for the first 6 to 9 months is just a little football that you tuck under your arm and carry wherever you go. And you're like, man, this is so hard. And then they start crawling. And you're like, oh my word, put the cats away, put everything away that this child can grab with their hand and put in their mouth.
Here's the thing. It's right. So we're continuing our series. We're getting close to wrapping it up. Most important financial advice you need to hear by decade. We're hitting your 30s. I don't care if you're in your 30s or in your 20s, or if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. This episode, this content's for you. I feel like the 30s are the new 20s. And, that's sort of a buzzword right now, whatever the phrase. But listen, a lot of people in their 30s, they're just starting to settle down in a career. Okay? And they're maybe just starting to settle down saying, I need to look for a spouse maybe, or I need to get serious about relationships. Maybe we'll start a family in our 30s. Most, at least for our generation, that sort of happened in your 20s. And so your 30s was about raising and you already have that foundation, so you're raising kids. But listen, I'm not poking anyone in the eye because the generation before us, they did that in their teens. They did that in their late teens. By 18, you were married and you were having kids at 18, 19, 20, right? Sure. And so anyway, when you're setting that foundation, whether it's in your 30s or your 20s, we're hitting your 20s next week, what's the most important financial advice you need to hear? And when you look at the 6 areas of financial planning, your present financial position really is that stability, that foundation. That's the first area of your financial life. So guys, it's the most important financial advice you need to hear in your 30s related to present financial position?
Well, and I think maybe we're drawing from our own experience and our observations from clients as well. But many people, as we were kind of joking, the 30s are it's that decade where you're figuring out this family thing, whatever family's going to look like for you. If it involves adding children or adding a spouse or anything like that, you go into a world where now all of a sudden it's not just you who's dependent upon the financial decisions being right. The stakes are higher because there's maybe more mouths to feed. There's more people who would be affected if you made a mistake or missed an opportunity, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they maybe get even more serious as they enter into their 30s because they realize, man, it's important for me to have that financial stability in my life. Maybe some debt that you've been carrying around, all of a sudden it's like, man, I need to get rid of this. It represents risk in my life or a payment that it just doesn't feel like it fits anymore. And so a lot of times that, as you said, your present financial position or the foundation that you're building upon gets really important. Hopefully you did a lot of that early work in your 20s, but if not, then in your 30s, now's the time to really focus on that.
It feels like your present financial position might be one of the most important, if not the most important area of your financial life in your 30s. And I'd tell you two different things. One, that emergency fund is essential.
Yep.
It's going to be harder to build right now. Why? Because gas costs more, bread costs more. And so we've played this crazy experiment over the past few years as an economy, and we're starting to realize we don't really love the results. It's going to be harder potentially for you to build up that emergency fund. It's critically important. And then the second, the skill and discipline of budgeting. The skill and discipline of budgeting is, you might, by the time you get in your 30s, especially mid-30s, and I've had this conversation with clients, they feel like, aren't we done with this now? I got out of college. I got my first job. I figured out how to budget and everything. And wait a second, I'm 10 years into my career, and you're telling me I still got a budget? Yeah, wait until we're talking about this at 60, right? That is a skill and a discipline to help you make sure that your expenses don't outpace your income and that you live intentionally with your finances so that you are able to achieve your today goals, appetite, and lifestyle, with tomorrow's goals, retirement, helping kids with college, buy a certain house, have financial freedom, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and in your 30s, you're starting to kind of realize the law of the harvest on a micro sense. Like you are reaping the fruit that you sowed in your 20s. Mm-hmm. So if you got married and you said, hey, we want to be, my wife and I, when we got married, we said, hey, look, we're going to, when we have children, Lori's going to stay home and with the children, and so let's try to live on one income. Well, when we got to our 30s, because we'd been practicing that for 7 years, we actually were kind of ready to do that.
Yeah.
Now, there was still the dilemma is going to be there will still be probably some meaningful career demands. So this is where you say, if I have pressure for my career and I have family pressure, how much more pressure in different areas of your life do you want to deal with? And I would say, don't let financial pressure be one of those. Mm-hmm. We started working with some folks, and they're in their early 60s and just retiring, and they had their budget, they had their delayed spending accounts funded for the new cars and everything else, and their emergency fund. And so it's so awesome if you start it in your 30s.
That's right. I mean, that you had. There's no coincidence that you're having a discussion with someone about retiring in their early 60s, being confident about that because they had those disciplines. That's what they're able to reap because they've sowed those habits. There's a lot more with present financial position in your 30s, but then protection planning, tax planning. What are the other big, most important financial advice you need to heed when you're in your 30s? We're hitting that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. You're at the Wise Money Show channel. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Saturday morning. Also on podcast, same time as well. Also on a couple radio stations in Northern Indiana where we're headquartered. And that's why the content's about 45, 50 minutes, something like that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we've got a lot of additional content that airs right here on this channel all throughout the work week. We've got next Wise Step videos, taking one financial concept, applying it directly to your financial life. What does the interest rate hike mean? Are we already in a recession? We have videos about that, helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications if you like the content, and leave comments as well. We appreciate it. Thank you. GDP now adjusted downward yesterday
To zero?
to 0.
Yeah. No,
Last time I looked at it was 0.9. The time before that I looked at it was 1.9.
Yep. It's coming.
It might be here. We might find out. We've been in a recession. And if you go back through and look at all the Next Wise Step videos, no one would, and just follow the train of thought. I mean, we could be seeing a recession. It's shocking, Gosh, how could we see a recession? Demand has been so strong. Geez, we could see a recession. It'd be crazy to think we're going to see a recession after demand. It's pretty possible. It could be. We might be there. There's just been this progression of, really?
Yeah.
Coming
to grips with the reality there.
it's interesting because and the thing that's encouraging and kind of heartwarming is that the unelected officials that make all of the decisions have been wrong at every point. Like Janet Yellen comes out and says, "Oh, actually, I was wrong. Inflation's not transitory; it's here to stay."
If you put the Fed's actions on a resume over the past 2 years,
You'd fire them all.
You'd fire them and almost sue them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of the headlines are starting to say they owe restitution, or they're, people thinking exactly the way you were just talking.
Now listen,
holy cow, how do you hold them accountable?
Anyone that's, if you're going to critique, you better say, well, I'll step up to that job. I'm not stepping into that job. No thanks.
No.
Right? So you just got to hope that these folks are making decisions that are the best the way they see it and not conflicted. However, they bought stocks. They bought bonds. They did some unprecedented things.
Yep. And they sold at market tops, and whether you're following. I mean, here's the thing: you talk about suing the Fed. Like, people can't even afford to put baby formula in their gas tank anymore. I mean, it is so awful. So I think when you look at this is the squeeze. The inflationary squeeze. And I was listening to some guys in a diner yesterday morning talking about Social Security is not enough, and I've gone back to work, and I'm listening, and I'm thinking, oh man, I wish I could have recorded that and just shown it, because who would you show it to? You'd show it to the people in their 30s.
That's right.
And say, listen, this person is crying out and I would say, and maybe this is for the content, but I'd say in your 30s, continue to ask yourself, what would the 65-year-old me be saying today?
Yep.
Let's get into it. Quickly, I'll make a couple comments about present financial position. You guys can add if you want to, and then we can move to protection planning and hopefully get into tax planning as well. So the most important financial advice you need to hear, receive, and apply when you're in your 30s. We're helping with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast wherever you listen. Go check it out. Search the Wise Money Show, and while you're there, subscribe to it or follow us, whatever you do on that platform, and then rate the program as well. We appreciate it. It helps give us feedback, and we take that serious and want to improve the content we're delivering to you. So thank you very much. All right, we're running around the circle. At the circle, 6 areas of financial planning, present financial positions, where we're starting in your 30s. We've said you've got to have an emergency fund, you got to be budgeting, you've got to consider living on one income. Right now in your 30s is oftentimes you're settling down in your career. So Kevin mentioned there's going to be a significant sacrifice that likely you're making and pressure you're making to build your career and help grow your income, your earning capital. Talked about potentially having kids. when you have kids, we've done lots of content on this before. When you have kids, it typically means as soon as it's like, okay, we're having kids, that's 3 budgets. You need to build 3 budgets. The budget from right now until you have the baby, the budget from maternity, likely you've got more expenses but less income during those 3 months. And then the now we've got a baby budget. The one after, okay, well, now, income is different and we've got more expenses. We've got childcare expenses, blah, blah, blah. 3 budgets. I would also add, really quickly, in your 30s, if you're still in that settle down mode, very challenging time to buy 2 significant assets, and that's a house and a vehicle. Mm-hmm. Very challenging. And so be very, very careful to not overextend yourself and try to play the compare game. It's possible this generation right now, Kevin made a comment. I remember when I bought my starter home. It was not a starter home. We were blessed. It was a small house, but it was beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. And that's so different than the generation prior. We might be going back. Mm-hmm. Your first house is likely not going to be at the same standard that the home was that you lived in growing up.
That's right.
And there was a season when that sort of was happening, and I don't think it can anymore based on housing affordability. All of that means you've got to work with your CFP, build out a game plan to manage these conflicting priorities.
But then also managing and hopefully creating for yourself margin in your financial life. When you first started your career, you may have had some margin and it went to fun things, just enjoying having some money for a change in life. And now, as you're starting a family and kids come along, the risk is first of all, that margin starts getting squeezed, but it becomes even more important because there are more financial priorities you're trying to achieve with that margin. And so it really does go back. If we were going to put the exclamation point on at least one of the disciplines in your present financial life, it is the discipline of managing your cash flow. It's building that budget and finding margin, because time is flying by, and you will see it more in watching your kids grow up than you even realize in the mirror.
That's
right.
Go ahead.
Well, I just think in my 30s, if we're still on present financial position, we've already hit this, write out a budget, but write a list of your goals. What am I trying to achieve financially? And then I wouldn't leave it there. I would look at all the other areas of my life. And I would look at the needs, and I would make a needs and wants list, just a T-chart. Needs on this side, wants on this side. Because if I don't have enough money to do what I want to do, I either have an income problem or an expense problem. Mm-hmm. And so there is some self-coaching that you can do, and I would get really serious about self-coaching. Most people aren't able to self-coach very effectively, and so they can go to a Financial Peace University or this or that or the other thing. And I've had lots of folks come in and say, "Hey, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan. I totally believe in all of his principles and everything else." I'm like, "Sweet, so do you have a budget?" And they're like,
Well, not really.
No. I'm like, how can you be a Dave Ramsey fan and not have a budget?
I just like watching him yell at people.
Right.
That's what I enjoy.
So Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Mm. And it makes me think of Jordan Peterson's self-authoring program as well, right? Which is, I've brought it up several times on the show. I still haven't done it, but I think that's a way to live intentionally, and setting that foundation and getting that right in your 20s or your 30s. Very important.
But continue to live an examined life, and to have self-awareness. And then figure out, if I have an income or expense problem, how do I deal with it?
Yeah.
I was still in my 30s packing my lunch.
Yeah.
And
I get teased about the lunches that I have every day at the KFG office. And I'll take it.
Yogurt and almonds, is it?
Oatmeal. It's oatmeal.
Oatmeal. Oh, okay.
All right. So protection planning is the next area in your overall financial life, guys. We're going to hit this really quick. Health insurance is probably on autopilot based on, if you've got an employer-sponsored plan. If you don't, then you need to work with a health expert to get on the right Affordable Care Act plan, something like that.
For sure, health insurance when you're having a baby,
Yes.
it might be time to say, okay, we've been on her insurance up to this point or his insurance up to this point. Who has the best insurance with maternity coverage and whatnot? So that could be thousands of dollars of difference.
Life insurance was the first one that I thought of, though.
Sure.
It comes up more often than disability is probably the next one on your list, I'm assuming.
It is, but the point I would make with life insurance is you go back to our friend Dave Ramsey. He's going to tell you in your 30s get a 20-year term policy. No
way.
Nope. There's no way. There's no way. In your 30s is typically when you're looking at getting a 30-year policy that can extend pretty close to when you're hoping to retire. And so work with a certified financial planner. Make sure that you know the right amount and the right type of insurance. That's a needs analysis approach that'll help get you there.
Yeah, hopefully in your 20s when you were thinking about life insurance, hopefully it was on your radar for starters here, but when you were, your needs were different. Your outlook for the future was different, and you may have gotten enough life insurance to say, okay, I have something in place now. But if you've started a family, you're married now, and there are other lives dependent upon you because maybe you're a breadwinner in the family. If you passed away prematurely, what kind of financial hit does that cause to the family? It's different today. And making sure that there's enough money to get those kids launched from the nest and make sure that your spouse is in a position that they can maintain the family's needs until those kids are launched and still have a bright future ahead.
Yeah.
So the life insurance need may go up, and so you may even be revisiting some of your insurance. But as I said, hopefully you've already got a base in place because who knows what's happened with your health over the past couple decades.
And it's possible you might not replace that base you already have. You'll just add on top of it, calling it a laddered life insurance strategy. So disability you mentioned, Josh. I mean, that's the thing. In your 30s, you've got so much earning potential for the rest of your career. And you've already mentioned, Josh, several times that you've got other people relying on that. Well, what if you all of a sudden are unable to work and earn that income? What if you have an accident, a car accident, and you're unable to work? So that's where I would also dovetail that into, in your 30s, probably for the first time, you've got to learn how that home and auto insurance works and make sure that you're making a good decision. In your 20s, it still feels new, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll just, get what mom and dad had or whatever. But in your 30s, it's time to take more responsibility and be more proactive about what do these coverage limits mean? Are they appropriate for your situation? And what would they cover, especially if you're a young professional and have high earning power, high earning potential, that sort of stuff. So protection planning, a key area of your financial life in your 30s, even at that young age. Tax planning next, and investment planning, two very important areas to focus on, especially right now. We've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right, so real short break. We've gone through two areas of the six, and we're halfway through the show. So
sounds about right.
That does sound about right. I could have told you that,
dude. We can burn through.
So it'll take 4 segments. That's fine. And if we're able to sneak a question in the fourth, that's okay as well. So tax planning could be easier. I don't know. Depends. Could be shorter. We're not going to be able to say everything that we're going to want to say. When you're in your 30s, taxes are pretty much on autopilot, right? Absolutely not. There's some, especially with some recent law changes, there's some big things you need to be aware of and decide on, plan for within the area tax plan. We're hitting that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and all of our social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. We are hitting our series on most important or best financial advice you need to hear when you're in certain decades of your life. We started at the older stages, and we're heading younger. So this is the 30s. Next week, we're wrapping up the series talking about most important financial decisions in your 20s. Within tax planning, you think, well, geez, I'm just starting my career. Everything's easy. Kids represent a very unique tax situation. I'm just going to say that because it changes all the time. So kids and retirement contribution or tax shelter decisions. Those to me are the biggies when it comes to tax planning in this stage of life.
I agree. You have to be careful in watching closely your income, because as the tax laws are constantly shifting, new rules, new interpretations even at times, all of a sudden there's new income thresholds that you have to be watching. And if you're not careful and, in your 30s, your income is growing, maybe you're really thriving in your career and earning more and more, and you've got kids, and you may be phasing yourself right out of some of the tax goodies that are on the table if you're not careful. And I'm glad that you're kind of matching together things like retirement contributions as well, because this is one of the levers that you can pull as you're in your 30s, thinking long term for retirement. You maybe have a 401k or another retirement plan at work. And often the question is, should I be using the traditional plan where I save myself some tax money by contributing to this thing in the year that I contribute, or should I use the Roth, relatively new in the retirement space compared to the other? And this one says, I'm going to pay my tax now and let this money grow tax-free forever in the future. So in other words, do I want to benefit from a tax perspective today or out there in the future when I'm in retirement? And that is a very, very important financial decision. And not just thinking long term, but even just this calendar year, it could make the difference between you getting some of those child tax credits or not.
And yet at the same time, when you just look at that, well, should I contribute pre-tax or Roth? That's an individual decision. It's based on just you. You can't look at what your neighbor did or your sibling did, whatever. You've got to look at your situation, and you typically need to look at it every single year to make sure you're doing, you're taking account any changes that have occurred. But without, short of that, since I don't know that about your situation, when you're young, advantage Roth.
Yep.
When you're
is it young or lower income?
That's the second one. When your
Both,
income
yeah.
potentially could be higher in the future, advantage Roth. And when the market's down, advantage Roth. And when you're in your 30s, thanks to the Fed, you might have all three of those happening right now. But you got to look at your overall tax situation with your CFP and see, but if you switch to Roth, will you be giving up some tax credits that therefore wouldn't be a wise thing to do? So,
and I would say the key thing is to understand what the levers are, because you can manipulate your taxable income using these various tools, these funding tools. And some of these funding tools, like the HSA, if you're having babies and you have a ton of medical expenses, you probably have a spending HSA versus a savings HSA. So there are all kinds of things that you want to be figuring out there.
But in order to take advantage of them, you have to have that margin in your life that we were talking about in the first segment, right? You have to have enough control over where cash is going that you give yourself options to direct money this way or that way.
Yeah.
And this is just an example. We say this all the time, that financial planning is an integrated endeavor, right? You can't just focus on your tax picture and ignore the rest of your life. Often the solutions are found in other areas of your financial picture when you're trying to solve a tax problem.
Isn't it when you're in your 30s right now, you got to consider a Roth conversion. Just going to throw that out there. And just like you talked about, Josh, how you can't look at each area of your financial life independently. This is why you need one plan. This is why you need a CFP that's doing comprehensive financial planning, because that's at odds with your tax goal. Completely is. And it might be at odds with your budget. Because if you do a Roth conversion, that's taxable. Moving pre-tax money to a Roth, that's taxable. Well, how do you come up with the tax? I'll just withhold it. Well, that means money came out of your IRA and the money that went to the federal government didn't land in your Roth. That means that money is penalized as well. I would want to avoid that if possible. Well, what if you couldn't avoid it? Should you still consider a Roth conversion? Possibly. Let's see how deep this thing goes. Depends on your overall financial situation. You can't look at your financial life in isolation. You've got to look creatively with a guide at all 6 areas of your financial life to see what opportunities exist and where do you go with this. So let's go right into investment planning then. That's the 4th area of everyone's financial life, your financial life. In your 30s, let me start by just saying, take the right level of risk. Our concern, and we saw this a lot after 2008, 2009, is newer folks who had never experienced investing before. All they heard was the economy's bad, market's down, stock market crashed. I'm not doing that. And so they started their investing and saving career putting it in low risk at the exact worst time. One of the best buying opportunities possibly you'll ever see, especially when you look back on what the market's done since then. Don't let this time spook you. When you're in your 30s, make sure you're taking the appropriate level of risk, because you're not going to touch this money for 30, maybe 40 years.
I agree completely. I think you also have to be careful to not get too creative in your investment approach as well. Right now, what is a major theme amongst folks in their 20s and 30s when it comes to the investment world? It's crypto, right? And they may or may not fully understand it, may or may not fully even understand the technology that's behind it, but they're getting, unfortunately, a glimpse into volatility. We're seeing a glimpse into volatility in the stock market and the bond market as well. And so, just be careful, I guess, if the only environment you've ever experienced is a climbing environment, a bull market, it's time to be educating yourself on the behavior of investments on the upside and the downside, especially because it can tug at your own emotions. And those emotions can drive your behaviors, and unfortunately, it rarely drives them in the right direction.
One of my favorites that we've gone through over the past couple of years is these TikTok financial folks. And there's a couple where the guy is, okay, I quit my job because I'm just investing. And let me tell you my strategy. I watch a stock, and when it starts going up, I buy it. And then after it's gone up for a little bit, I sell it. That's what I do. You might be able to do that too. Take care. It was like, okay, that's not really how investing works, bud. But it will work in a season, in a small microcosm, in a vacuum. Sure, yep, it's as easy as that. But it's not.
Right, that's trading. So I would make the distinction between trading and investing. And in your 30s, you want to have a great foundation of investing. Like if you have extra money that you don't really want, then I would consider digital assets, right? Look into cryptocurrency and try to understand it. There's, the fourth level of the internet is out there. And so there are all these things that you should be understanding. But I would you're in your 30s now, get away from fear of missing out, get away from playing the comparison game. There's all these things that you should be graduating from, thankfully.
Tortoise and the hare.
Tortoise wins every time.
So do that consistent right thing with saving into your investments into a disciplined, long-term, prudent strategy. All right, we've got more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right, fourth segment. So we'll hit retirement, estate planning, anything else. And if there's time, we can look at a question or two. I'll probably grab the one about I-bonds. Are they a good investment right now? So I'll just pull that up. I don't know if we'll have time.
I have I-bonds. Did I do that?
No.
Yeah.
I need to.
You can buy 10.
10 grand.
Each.
Electronically per ownership. And then I think you can buy $5,000 paper.
In addition.
So you could do up to 15, as I understand it, but
yeah, I mean, it doesn't say one excludes the other.
As always, the simplest investment is by far the most complicated.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I had the joy of trying to formulate an email to a client with this question, and it's like, oh my goodness, you got to write a book just to explain these things.
Yeah, just say treasurydirect.com.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. If you've missed anything, good news, every episode of the Wise Money Show, as well as a lot of other content on the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, and turn on notifications so you're made aware. Because every single Saturday, we drop this episode, but all throughout the work week, We're sharing next wise step videos, keeping you up to date on what's going on with market volatility, how to invest when there's market volatility, talking about inflation, talking about planning principles, creative financial planning strategies. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and like the content on the Wise Money YouTube channel. Okay, guys, rounding the bend here on the 6 areas of your financial life, the most important financial decisions you need to make when you're in your 30s. We've hit the first 4 areas. 5th area is retirement planning. Do you even worry about that when you're in your 30s? Kevin, you made a comment earlier. It looks like you're doing some research right now, but about when you're making financial decisions in your 30s, think about how these decisions would impact the 65-year-old you.
Yeah, well, I would be thinking about having a conversation with the 65-year-old version of me, and what would that 65-year-old be saying? And for a lot of folks, that 65-year-old is sitting there saying, look, I just had a health event. Listen, I'm trying to take care of my parents. Listen, I'm trying to take care of one of you children who moved back into my basement with my grandchildren. I need more money. Like, don't use all the money. I need it at 65.
I need more flexibility, actually, is what I'm hearing. I need more flexibility because I've got to react and respond, and I'm responsible for certain things, and I need to be able to adapt and flex. And if I didn't start early, then I'm not as nimble. If I didn't prepare ahead of time, I'm not as nimble when I need to be.
I think, and I would say choices. I need the freedom to make choices that I want to make. I'm at 65. Mm-hmm. And those seeds, again, the law of the harvest, those seeds are sown in your 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm. Especially if the life circumstances that are being presented to you in your 60s are crummy ones. You know, the health concerns, the family needs, maybe a change in your industry, and you've got to decide whether or not you retire early. You want to put yourself in a position where you can make awesome choices, ideal choices, even when the world around you it feels like it's stacked against you potentially.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, if you said, what is success in your 30s, I would say success in your 30s is the same as success overall from 0 to 90, which is balance. Mm-hmm. So you are not going to, you may be realizing, hey, at the rate that I'm going, I'm not going to fully fund my retirement plan. I went online and did an online calculator. Mike's a huge fan of those. And I've realized, hey, I'm not going to be able to retire at the level that I need to. So this is what I would encourage you to do. Just rock steady and continue to have the right habits and let things happen, because over time, if you have the right habits, you will have opportunities, and you'll either change your goals, because this is the thing that you might not understand in your 30s. Well, at any age, is your financial goals change. Inevitably, your financial goals change as life changes. So I would say, well, just relax. It's going to be okay. Do what you need to do. Absolutely. Make sure your priorities are correct and take care of those. Don't sacrifice your family for the idea of financial independence. Don't do it. It'll never, ever be worth it. I was walking with Coach McKiernan on our soccer field last night, and he said, man, I remember when we were talking and you said, these kids are going to be gone before you know it. And you know what? Our kids are gone. Mm-hmm. The soccer fields, it's just grass now. So it just go watch the movie Dead Poets Society if you want to know. But we're all grass, right? It just
from a retirement standpoint, when you're in your 30s, start saving 15%. Why is that the perfect number? Should I do 16? Could I get away with 14? I don't know. Do 15. Okay, just start there. Start there towards retirement. I would. Advantage Roth, okay? We're not saying you've got to do Roth, but Advantage Roth. Second thing is manage your budget. Wait, I thought you already talked about that in present financial position. No, I know. Guys, when you're doing retirement planning for someone, when they're in that retirement red zone, that last few years before retirement, and then a bear market hits or a big financial change and they need to retire early, whatever. The ones that have great control or management of their cash flow, those are the ones, right, that you're easily able to say, yeah, you can adapt. You're ready because you've done such a great job managing your appetite and your spending, right?
Absolutely. And those are the folks who have a lifetime together, an entire marriage full of always living within their means, one way or another. And sometimes they're living within their means when the income is just pouring in, and they adapt and they can live within their means even when things get tight.
A friend who I know he's listening because he's a big fan of the Wise Money Show. I met with him and his wife recently, and she'd been teetering on when she was going to be done, all that sort of stuff. And she recently had someone at her office come into her office and just threw up all over her desk. Just could you imagine?
Literally?
Literally. Your work. You're right. It's happened figuratively lots of times, pretty much on the day.
I was going to say, is she an HR professional or what does that mean?
No, she works in medical field, and so this isn't totally out of the question. Yet that'll ruin your day, ruin your week, and So, but here's the deal: we've had a tough market, all sorts of, and it's can she retire? Can we retire? And we've been doing financial planning for years now, but one of the key components that key factors is, guys, you've done a great job managing your expenses all these years and knowing your budget. Honestly, you could turn on Social Security today and that'd pretty much cover all your expenses because you've done such a great job budgeting. So yes, in your 30s, you want to get ready for retirement, start saving 15%, budget like crazy, build that skill, maybe live on one income, and make sure you're funding your investments and investing them at the right risk level so that when you're in your 60s or 62, 63, you don't need to throw a Hail Mary and let's hope the market does really well so I can get over the hump here. You can take that risk early, and this might be a fabulous, a generational buying opportunity for you. Maybe.
Yeah, in your 30s, I mean, you're talking about the people in their 60s that are hoping the market will maintain or increase. In your 30s, you're hoping the market will go down. And it doesn't feel like that, but if you like buying stuff on sale, you're hoping the market will go down.
Man, I just had that conversation with someone in their 30s earlier this week, and actually part of that conversation, maybe I would agree with almost everything you said, Mike, except for the just go save 15%. Because the example that I just had this week was someone who had not been doing 15% all along, and they actually need to play some catch up. And that was the fundamental question that they wanted to talk about in their meeting. Just like the 60-year-old, can I retire? The 30-something is saying, am I on pace to be able to retire? Which is a wonderful question to be asking. And ultimately, they recognized in prior meetings, because we do comprehensive financial planning, we have a real retirement projection that we look at on a regular basis. And we realized, hey, you need to be saving more than 15%.
So what'd you tell them, 15 and a half?
Yeah. They're doing 20.
Good.
And
fantastic.
It's a strain. It's taken some adjustment and so on. But the other piece, the part of the pep talk, in addition to, hey, be ready for a downturn and take advantage of a downturn when you're in your 30s, because it's a great buying opportunity. I also was trying to encourage them, take care of yourself in your 30s, because sometimes people will sacrifice their own health in their 30s. Kevin gave the warning about sacrificing time and relationship with kids in your 30s. Some people will get themselves burned out on their work in their 30s. And, some of the work that Tim Ferriss has done kind of opened your eyes, too, about the idea of having balance and not waiting until your 60s to enjoy or to take advantage of that recoup time, that replenishment time. Time away from the office. Build that into your normal rhythm so that you can maybe go a little bit longer. And I've been telling more and more 30-somethings that you need to be at least mentally prepared, physically prepared, professionally prepared to potentially work longer than your parents did.
Can I add one last thing before we hit estate planning? You've got to save 15%. I'm just kidding. No. The thing that I would reiterate is, Josh, I didn't know you were going to say that, but it's what you last said. Social Security is going to change for you if you're in your 30s. You don't know how, and you actually the only control you have is with your votes, and that probably isn't going to. They're not really going to decide that either. So it's going to change likely. Okay, so you might be typically the American dream, the way I see it, is in a way, yeah, you can go out and be whoever you want to be. Yes, sure, but typically, it's each generation has it better than the previous generation. That's the Mike Bernard version of American Dream. With retirement, so many people look at their financial goals and think, same thing. I saw my parents retire at 65. I'll be able to retire at 60. I saw my parents retire at 62. I'll be able to retire at 55. I think I can retire at 50. With financial planning, with finances, it's not that way. Your standard of living should be better. But doesn't mean you'll just automatically, the system's set up for you to retire early. Actually, guys, the system, because you're living longer, you're healthier, those sorts of things, the system is automatically set up that you're going to have to work a little bit longer than your parents. Truly, that's how this works. So have the right expectations. Estate planning. When you're in your 30s, if you're starting that family, getting married, this might be the first time that you need that basic estate plan and say, oh, well, I guess I'll get a will online. Nah, you need more than that. You need more than that. And you're going to need a guide to make sure a will with testamentary, language in there might be the most important advice you need to hear right now, depending on your circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you're referring to is it's the will. That's the document that you get to craft with an attorney and sign and basically go on record as saying, these are my wishes after I'm gone. What happens to the money I'm leaving behind, and who's going to take care of the kids? And if you leave those decisions up to somebody else, namely the state, I don't know, you're leaving your family at risk, ultimately. So don't leave this piece of your financial plan incomplete or lacking.
And it's not just a will. It's a full basic estate plan, but it's a living will, it's medical directives, powers of attorney, that sort of stuff. In your 30s, do you have the perspective where you can determine whether you need a trust or not? Possibly work with the CFP to see if you actually need a revocable living trust or not. I wouldn't just blindly go to an attorney and say, this is what I need, have that diagnosed. And then also, as you're accumulating assets, that's part of your financial priorities in your 30s. Make sure you've got the right ownership structure and beneficiary structure. So work with your CFP even in your 30s to make wise financial decisions. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.